Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America and also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful November the 26th, 2019. Ronda Deportes. Big C will be calling in shortly. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I keep hearing people should go see that show. It's also raining here in Northern California. We really need the water, but people got to learn to slow down, especially when you're driving. You don't want to cause any mess out there on the highways. Please take your time and drive safely. I know we're not used to rain in California. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And also, you know, it's the holidays. We got this holiday theme. Everybody's out shopping. A lot of turkeys are out hiding, Big C. And everybody's looking forward to getting that last gift off the shelf. And I hope that people can be nice. Just be nice to your fellow Americans when people are out doing their things. We're all trying to get the same turkey, and sometimes that turkey's hard to catch, Big C, especially when it knows that it's Thanksgiving. I want to say Big C Sports is brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google, or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You're here. Welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of other smart TVs all over the universe. And I'm just so excited about the holiday season. The first rain really hit Northern California today, and you notice it when you're out driving. All the TV stations are telling you, please slow down, take your time. Wherever you're going, it's going to be there, even if you get there a little bit late. And I know cars sometimes will do hydroplaning, and people are just in such a hurry. So please take your time and slow down. I want to give out this National Suicide Hotline number that we always give. It's for military veterans, also for civilians, people who may be going through anything in life. And sometimes you don't know who people are if they're having problems, but they know who they are. They can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and they can hopefully get some help. I know a lot of people are talking about football, and this time of the year, you know, football is a great game. And if you see the interest in football in Los Angeles, I think it's great. USC, UCLA, I know they've fallen on a little bit of hard times, but if you're like the Trojans and you're putting up 7 wins, they'll most likely have 8 wins this year and then get into a bowl game. That's not USC standards, but it's still showing that they can take a little pause from being great and then push back up that mountain. Not too many moons ago, they were a Pac-12 champion and then Rose Bowl champion as well. They had beaten Penn State. I know that was a long time ago, but Sam Darnold was quarterback. So I think that Helton should stay employed as a coach of Southern California Trojans. And then when you look at Kelly, Chip Kelly over for UCLA, I know they took a big loss in the crosstown rival game that was played at the Coliseum. But the Bruins, they're a young team, and they have some talent. I know they've given Kelly maybe give him another year to have at least his own recruiting class as his seniors to come in there and see if they can turn things around for the great UCLA Bruins. And I know it's about everybody in LA. They're saying, well, how can we keep more talent from California to stay in California? And ultimately what you got to do is you got to be on television more. Just like the days of Pete Carroll, going all the way back to the days of John McKay, when USC was winning football games, when Terry Donahue was coaching over at UCLA, they were winning. Same media market, same high school kids, and it had less exposure at that time. So when people talk about how we're going to get these teams to stay competitive in the Pac-12, I think what the Pac-12 is facing is a lot of teams play each other. And when you do that, you're not going to align your schedule with teams like Samford, not Stanford, but Samford. We know some schools down in the South do that. They're not going to play the Citadel. We know a lot of programs do that too. And so everybody has their own opinion about who they should play and how do you get more conference exposure. And we know it's just a matter of time, but it will happen. It will happen just like all the bells and whistles for the holidays. It will happen. Big C, I know we got you calling in shortly, and we're having all kind of technical difficulty with all the landlines. You know our phone is being bugged. We're not in the White House for impeachment hearings, but I do know sometimes that happens too. So I pardon my French, but we're having some blippity-blip problems with our sound system today. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, everything is moving along well. You know, after that boring football game in Los Angeles last night, I think I fell asleep halfway between the beginning and the end of the game.
Yeah, well, I was just saying how a lot of times we were talking about how football can come back. I think Los Angeles last night, and I know everybody wants to see the new stadium and how can we get football relevant on the West Coast again. And I think it is. Seeing that crowd show up last night and then going back into USC, UCLA, I was just saying the Friday show, I believe, that the footing might be a little bit of an issue for running quarterbacks. But I was wrong because USC and UCLA played on that same, the same turf at the Coliseum. It wasn't the best turf on Monday night's game, but it wasn't that bad either. But that West Coast flavor, the same thing that can save the West Coast football, Big C, in my opinion, is the same thing we saw last night, which is just more exposure. It's not the fact that the stadiums are not new. It's about exposure and getting more of the TV revenue. And sometimes the Pac-12 network, it's hard to find it, even if you live in California, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the game last night, Charlton, half the people in the stadium were there to see Lamar Jackson. It wasn't about the Rams. It was about Lamar Jackson and the epic show that he was looking to put on last night for Monday Night Football fans across the country. You talk about Pac-12 competition, Charlton. It's about the players on the field. I mean, everybody wants to blame coaches when teams are losing.
Right.
But a coach has never gone out there and made a tackle or thrown a pass during the game. It's about the execution of the players. Where's the mindset of the players? Players now are about getting likes on Instagram and Facebook and all those things, Charlton. They're not so much about playing football, and that's one of the things about the West Coast. If you look at the breakdown and the composites of the players on the West Coast versus the South and the East, Charlton, they spend so much time trying to get likes on their pages versus the plays on the field.
Yeah, I was noticing that a lot. Well, that happens everywhere. Even the quarterback for the Washington Redskins, he was trying to sign some pitchers. They had gotten their second win of the season, so maybe he was happy about that. But there's also times when you
but he's going to get fined about that also.
Yeah, he will, and maybe. But remember the days when Terrell Lawrence had the Sharpie in I think it's at the bottom of the goalpost in a game that they were playing, and that made a big to-do about nothing. Who was it? Ezekiel Elliott jumped into the Salvation Army bucket down in Texas. And, everybody has their opinion about is a player focused or not, but I know what the NBA does right, and it's about fan influence and how you get people involved. The NBA, they actually have a lot of players that will shake the fans' hands walking out of a game. It's just a short tunnel, and I think even down in Dallas, when they come onto the field, they walk at, I want to say, as a ground level so that people can see them. And so we're trying to take that out of the game. I don't know if that's fan-friendly, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at the interest into stadiums. The newer stadiums have where fans have accessibility to players because players walk right between them. One of the things, the reason why a lot of NFL fans and players don't interact during the game, Charlton, is just they're up above the players.
Yeah.
That's the reason why. They're not at the level of the players. So when you look at an NBA player, the court is right there. The fans are right next to the court, sit next to the players.
Yeah.
You don't get that in the NFL. You're 15 yards removed from the fans, Charlton, and for various reasons.
Yeah.
So you're never going to have that fan interaction in football like you have it in basketball.
And I noticed the Levi Stadium in San Francisco, they also have a ground-level entrance where you can come in and you can see it. The Coliseum in Oakland last year, it will be used for NFL football. When their players come in, you're not where you can touch the fans, and that's for a good reason. Sometimes you don't want that to happen where you can touch the fans, But I do know the contrast in college sports, and I was talking about how the interest in Pac-12 football is not that it's down, it's that some of the TV networks, like the Pac-12 network, sometimes it's just hard to get credentialed. And I think they're on one cable system, and they need to have just more accessibility. That's just my opinion on that. But the exposure, seeing that old Coliseum, and it has a lot of ghosts in it, a lot of memories. They played baseball games there. It's been home to the Olympics. They've had some Pac-12 championships. High schools have played there too. And I know they want that new stadium, and it's going to happen, the $5 billion stadium site. I think it's SoFi Center or SoFi Center in Inglewood. But I would love to see the Coliseum still stay in use, and I believe it will be with USC, of course. Would love to see UCLA come back also, Big C. Give me your thoughts on if the new digs in town will make the old digs irrelevant, Big C. Your thoughts?
They're not. It's still going to be a college stadium. It's always been a college stadium for USC, UCLA. At one point, they both used to share that facility. The NFL facility out in Inglewood will be shared by two NFL teams, Charlton. Neither one of the colleges will play there because they're too far away from the campus, so it's not attractive. If you're trying to get the student body to be part of the attendance at a game, Charlton, you can't have a game 25 miles away from campus.
Yeah, and when I was just talking about, too, it's starting to rain Northern California, so people have a hard time driving. It's as if you're supposed to slow down just by common sense, but so many people just don't understand when you have rain on the road, it's going to mix with the oil, and it's going to become slippery. But some people just don't understand that, it seems, and I don't know why it is. And I'm sure you guys have the same issues down south, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we get rain on a regular basis down here in the south this time of the year, Charlton, so people have become very adjusted to the driving. I'm more concerned about people on the dry surfaces driving too fast. Yeah,
that's also a situation to deal with, too. But we hope that people can stay safe out there. So I want to just go back to that building up. I'm trying to draw the correlation between Pac-12 football and when football is relevant in Los Angeles. No need to fire Clay Helton. I know they have a new athletic director. But we're in a cycle of fast food society. If you don't like what you want or what you have, instead of working to make it better, people say, well, just go get another fast food burger. But the thing with USC and UCLA and what I saw last night at the Coliseum, football is big in LA. There's just so much to do, so your interest can be dissipated a little bit. But when you have good athletes and it's marketed right, the way the NFL markets their programs, Big C, I think the Pac-12 can learn a lot from that. I know a lot of the crowd left when Baltimore blew them out, but it was still a nice setting for football, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's the anticipation of a great game. L.A. is not the team that they were last year. They floundered quite a bit. You know, when you look at the comparisons of the two quarterbacks, people showed up to see what Lamar Jackson was going to do.
Yeah.
And he delivered on what the promise was that he would perform on the biggest of stages, Charlton. And the L.A. Rams, this was a team that was in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
And you look at their quarterback, Jared Goff, he has not thrown a touchdown pass in his last 3 games.
Yeah.
Yet he has thrown 5 interceptions. So this is a team that's going south in Los Angeles and a team that's rising to the top of the league in Baltimore.
I want to ask your thoughts on something. I forgot the player's name, so I don't want to say the wrong player, but there was an interview they were asking one of the defensive players, and I think he played college ball at Utah. They were asking him what it was like to face the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. And he said, I couldn't tell if he had the ball. I couldn't tell who had the ball. Now, you have a defense that was considered one of the best defenses in football. When you're NFL players, I mean, anyone can have an excuse. But have you ever had that situation? It's not like they're running the Delaware wing T where they can fake the 4 or 5 different guys, Big C. This is 1 or 2 players. It's either run or hand off, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the difference in what the Baltimore Ravens are doing now, Charlton, versus any other team in the NFL is that it's like in college football when you have Navy show up that runs the wishbone and you don't play against it but 1 game a year.
Yeah.
This is the same thing in the NFL. You cannot simulate what the Baltimore Ravens do on a game day throughout the week in practice, Charlton. What Lamar Jackson brings to the NFL is something that we've never seen before. We've seen tidbits of it. We've seen Randall Cunningham.
Yeah.
We've seen Michael Vick. In the heyday, we saw Fran Tarkenton do it a little bit. Doug Flutie was the best simulation of what we've seen in modern football.
Not as fast.
we're getting with Lamar Jackson, but the NFL did not want Doug Flutie to play because of what we see now in Lamar Jackson. That's always been the throwback against athletic black quarterbacks, is that they change up the mantra of the NFL, the status quo where a quarterback drops back in the pocket.
Yeah.
He's a stationary target. He might move around a little bit, but here it is with Lamar Jackson and the speed and quickness that he has, Jonathan. It's very difficult. You're trying to come off a block from a 320-pound offensive lineman, and you're trying to figure out, does Mark Ingram have the ball, who is cat quick out of the backfield as a running back, or Lamar Jackson, did he keep the ball, who is lightning quick as a quarterback?
Yeah. I tell you, when I saw, I think even Michael Vick was there, and everybody wants to see this nouveau riche type of quarterback. But I want to get your thoughts, too. You know, you know how sometimes the universe will justify things no matter what people say. And I know there are many media people saying, who do you want to have to come from behind if you're a team trying to get into the playoffs or just win a game? And mainstream said it's Aaron Rodgers. Well, it's not Aaron Rodgers, Big C. And it's something about letting people prove it on the field that will justify everything that the athlete feels about himself. Every athlete feels that he's the best in the world at whatever he does. Media will say, well, no, don't look at, I'm going to be just honest, don't look at those black guys. They're not cerebral. They're not able to lead a team. They're just athletic, and they want to make them defensive backs or running backs. I know that maybe we're a year behind that conversation, but it's still out there, Big C. That's why Colin Kaepernick is not employed, for other reasons, too. But if you can say that Aaron Rodgers he's not washed up, but he's definitely not an option for what the NFL will become in the next 5 or 10 years if race becomes irrelevant, and I don't know if that ever will happen, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Aaron Rodgers won't be in the NFL in 10 years. He may not be in the NFL in 5 years as he's getting along in age, and he's been beat up quite a bit. But if I'm looking for a quarterback to have the ball in the last 2 minutes of an NFL game, Charlton, I'm going to look at Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City.
Really?
When I talk about a quarterback who can throw the ball from any position to any spot on the field in any weather, it's Patrick Mahomes. When you look at what he has done in his 2 years as a starter in the NFL, it's not because of him that the Kansas City Chiefs are a bad football team. It's because of their defense.
Yeah.
But the uncanny ability to throw the football, I mean, Lamar Jackson can run. But we've never seen anybody who can throw the ball like Patrick Mahomes in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I know they played each other earlier in the year, and Mahomes outsigned, Jackson. But he's becoming a better player, it seems, with every game becoming a better player. And maybe the team is learning how to block for him. I know a lot of quarterbacks they got to realize you cannot run your blocking too. You talked about how defensive linemen, how do you get off that 340-pound lineman blocking you and then find out who has the ball? The same thing with the quarterbacks. You cannot outrun your blocking. So he's done a great job of that. If I can get your thoughts for a moment, because everybody's marveling about how great this guy is, and it happened also to Vic. But Vic never won a Super Bowl. As far as, some things happened that got in the way, some foolish things that he did. But in this league, defensive coordinators will figure you out. So what can they figure out when you can't find out who has the ball, Bixie? How will they stop him? Your thoughts?
Well, we're getting to the point where people are going to start talking about seeding for the playoffs. Lamar Jackson right now is the second seed in the AFC as far as playoff goes.
Yeah.
That road currently, if the playoffs were to start today, goes to New England. You're not going to go up to New England and see Bill Belichick for a second time this season. He hasn't figured out what to do with you.
Yeah.
You're going to take away one of the options of the Baltimore Ravens, which you would just automatically take away Lamar Jackson. Can he throw the ball in the cold and the snow that you're going to have in the playoffs? That's the biggest question mark.
Yeah.
We also saw last year when Lamar Jackson had to face the Los Angeles Chargers for a second time. They figured him out.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. You've seen the guy once.
Yeah.
He might have gotten you. But you see him a second time. If you haven't coached yourself to be prepared for that the second time around, then you're not a good coach.
Let me ask you about good coach, because I know McVay was the best coach in the universe last year before he got a hold of, or Bill Belichick got a hold of him in the Super Bowl, Big C. And I wish everyone the well, and I want $100 million. Everybody wants that kind of money. But when you look at Jared Goff, he got that kind of money. And if we look at what he's done, not to jump on him, but, facts are facts. The way you get better is tell people the truth. This guy signed his contract at the right time. Because had the Gronke family did to Goff what that good old boy Jerry Jones is doing to Prescott, then he wouldn't have gotten that $100 million because no one would have paid for what they're seeing now. And they can blame Lyman. They can say, well, Todd Gurley had a hitch in his giddy up. Well, we don't have all the same. They can blame everybody. But you had a guy that looks like a deer in the headlights, and that's what I saw at Cal Berkeley. And he had a good year last year, but he's came back to who he is. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, statistically, his yards are the same as that they were last year. It's just he has no touchdown productive this year. In the last 3 games, he has not thrown a touchdown pass for whatever reason. He just got his 2 top receivers, Cooks and Woods, back last night. So being out of sync with those 2 players for the last 3 weeks, Charlton, has hurt his productivity also.
Yeah.
But as we always judge quarterbacks, and Carson Wentz and Jared Goff both got the big contracts during the offseason, we both look at them right now on the outside end, potentially not making the playoffs with their teams this year, even though they have the guaranteed money, but they can't guarantee wins.
Yep.
A lot of these things, as we talked about McVay, being the quarterback whisperer, the next bright young coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
Just like with players, coaches get tapes on coach.
Yeah.
So they know what your tendencies are.
Yeah.
And that's what you have right here with John Harbaugh last night. You have a coach who has been around the block, who has a Super Bowl title, who understands what great defense is. And when you have a great defense, you can stymie any offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
People rave about Lamar Jackson night in and night out, and rightly so. But they need to rave a little bit more about this Baltimore defense. It might not be the defense that had Ray Lewis and Ed Reed on it, Charlton.
Right.
But it's damn sure pretty close.
Yeah, they are close. And so as I'm asking you, I know you may go against the grain of McShay and Kiper and those guys that a lot of pundits listen to. And if you would have listened to them, Jackson would not be on the field right now. He would have been defensive back or right receiver. That's just a fact. You can Google it. But Goff, they were pumping him. So I want to ask you this thought before I get on to another spot on the field. And we've seen this before, so maybe it's a stupid question. Are we seeing, if you're an NFL GM, and you're seeing what wins? We saw the change happen in basketball when they integrated basketball. We saw the change happen in baseball when they integrated baseball. We've seen the change happen in football. We've seen it in so many things. But what mainstream doesn't want to happen is if you have too many guys looking for the next Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson, that makes it harder for the next Caucasian quarterback. And they spent so much money over the last 50 years telling everybody in the universe that the white guy was the look, that he was cerebral, he was hardworking, he put in the time, and he knew he had another coach on the field. That's all dispelled when it comes to the color line, Big C. Are we going to see more GMs looking for guys like Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson on the college campus? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, look, Charlton, those guys have always been there on college campuses. You have to understand the makeup of the NFL. It is an investment. And the reason why the NFL has stayed like it is because you don't want one player to change the total dynamics of a league.
Yeah.
Because now, not just the quarterback position, Charlton, you have to change. You also have to change the dynamics of offensive linemen and defensive linemen.
Yeah.
You got to look at all these players that you have invested guaranteed money into. Can they play the position? Can you mold them to fit the athleticism of one of these quarterbacks? These are the things that you look at. Baltimore had set out what they were going to do. This just wasn't a one-year plan with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Ozzie Newsome knew what he was doing when he drafted Lamar Jackson. He also drafted offensive linemen, Charlton, over that 2-year span that could fit the mold of Lamar Jackson's playing scheme.
Yeah.
He also went out and got tight ends to fit that mold. If you look at their offense, it's not heavily laden in wide receivers, big-time wide receivers. They have big tight ends in that offense that are also blockers that can catch the football.
Yeah.
So you change the dynamics of the entire offensive structure, not just one player.
Yeah, I love what's happening. And I'm a cynical person at times because I read so much and I'm thinking, wow, that's not fair. But do you think that we would ever, because I believe that things happen And the people at the power structure, they spend a lot of money telling people what color to like, what color people should be, hair color, eye color, skin color, the paperback test. They've done a lot of that garbage over the last 100 years. Will we ever see what a lot of people would write home about and say that's one of the best things I've ever seen? Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson. If Seattle, the Seahawks, were to go to the Super Bowl, and the Baltimore Ravens, you would see something the NFL has always pushed away. They've always shied away from it. And I would see two African-American quarterbacks, and it would become like the NBA. I think the world would love it, but that's not what the NFL has put money in, and I don't think we'll ever see that. I hope I'm wrong. Mixie, your thoughts?
Well, the bottom line, if you saw two African-American quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, Charlton, one of them would end up losing the game.
Yeah.
It comes down to winning as a team. I mean, the opportunity is there for both of those guys, but they have to win out. Seattle would have to win out in the NFC. They would have to run the gauntlet, and most likely they will be a wild card team going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
They would have to run the table to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Baltimore right now is the second seed in the AFC, and as things stay status quo, they would have to go through New England. They would have to beat Tom Brady, which is very difficult to do in Foxborough.
Yeah.
So the opportunity is there for both of those guys. They just have to win.
They just got to win. Let me just throw some shade on a little bit of the running back. I know I love what Frank Gore's doing. I just want to see him healthy when he's 10 years out of the game, Big C. But he just keeps running that ball. I know he had the hip injury back in the day, but he's still running. We talk about what quarterback do you trust with the last 2 minutes of a game, and you got to drive. You're down 28-24, 2 minutes left. Who do you trust? And you said you like Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people are saying Jackson. I think a lot of people said Tom Brady at maybe 3 years ago. But if Tom Brady can't run, then he's a liability. If Jared Goff can't run, he's a liability. A lot of guys can't do that. But sometimes you got to turn around and hand it to the running back. There are no more beast modes in the NFL. He's gone. At one time we thought it was Todd Gurley. He's shown that he's not that. Is there any running back that you say, you know what, outside of Jackson, I want this guy to have the ball in the last 2 minutes down by 4, Big C? Your thoughts?
The running back that I would take in the NFL right now, Charlton, and he's probably the most underrated running back in the NFL, but I've loved him ever since he was a second-round draft pick out of Georgia. Nick Chubb with the Cleveland Browns. Yeah. He is the most underrated running back in the NFL, but he's also, I believe, the most dynamic and dominating running back. You think about where he is. He's the second leading rusher in the NFL, Charlton. But as he goes, the Cleveland Brown goes. When he's productive with 100-yard games, they win, and that's what they've been. They've been on a winning streak. He's been knocking out the 100-yard games, Charlton, but as far as catching the ball, running the ball with power, Nick Chubb's, give him to me in the last 2 minutes of the game.
What do you think of that good old boy up in Minnesota, Dalvin? He's off the hook, too. Also, Ezekiel's good, and I thought Zeke was banged up at times, especially in the Minnesota game, but he seemed to have found his equilibrium running against the New England Patriots. Big C just didn't get the ball enough, in my opinion. And so we got your thought on the running back. If you said the receiver, Jerry Rice doesn't exist anymore. You know, Randy Moss doesn't exist anymore. One of my favorites from way back in the day, the late Cliff Branch, Big C. And then Alvin Harper, even though played inside. You know, Michael Irvin got a lot of catches down there too. But is there a guy today as a receiver that you want to have that guy in the game? You want to throw it to him? I used to say it was Amari Cooper, but I thought he disappeared against New England, just my opinion. Anyone that really strikes your attention and say, I got to get this guy a catch if we need a touchdown to win the game, your thoughts?
Charlton, there's a handful of receivers that equal any of those receivers that you named from the past that are playing currently right now in the NFL. We got record breakers that those guys that you named could not even match up. You think about Mike Evans, the only receiver in NFL history to have 6 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to start his career. But the guy that I would take right now of any of those guys you even named, Michael Thomas, wide receiver, New Orleans Saints, who has set a consecutive 100-reception season record, Charlton, coming into the NFL. He is the best receiver in the NFL. This guy already, you know, the season's not over. He has 120 receptions already.
Yeah.
He's going to break the single-season record that he already holds.
Yeah.
So Michael Thomas is uncoverable as a wide receiver in the NFL. I haven't seen this before in a guy who stands 6'4" and can run any route and catch anything that they throw at him. His hands look like flypaper. Everything sticks to him, Charlton. And he doesn't wear stickum like the old Oakland Raiders Fred Biletnikoff used to wear. But Michael Thomas, there's no DB in the NFL that can cover him.
Yeah, well, that's a great – I would love to get Big C's, all NFL team. We'll do that before the playoffs start. Big C's all NFL team. A lot of players won't be able to play in the game because they won't make the playoffs. But I just love what we have in the NFL. I think L.A., to see Jackson do what he did last night and to be in Los Angeles and to see all the people there at the Coliseum, of course, before the fourth quarter, but that was just a great theater because he's running in the same Olympics. I mean, when I thought about the Olympics, I think about, Carl Lewis. I thought about FloJo. Just thinking about all the great events that we've seen in the Coliseum from way back in the day, from baseball, Olympics, track and field, football, college, high school, and pro. I thought that was a great way to just celebrate football in Southern California last night. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. We're going to come back and talk about a few more things. And I love football, and we got some NBA also. We'll be back in just a moment, and you're going to love what we talk about in the second half. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I really love are called Ask Google. You can say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of other smart TVs all over the universe. As we talked about that great game, we talked about what happened with football in Southern California from the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 network that needs more advertisement. You got to advertise your product and get more people to see it on a national level, and that includes high school kids too. I want to get Big C's top 10 NFL football teams. I'm going to count it down backwards from 10 to 1. And there's a lot of good players in this league. The NFL is a perfect marketing machine. Big C's thoughts on the top 10. Who's number 10 in Big C's poll? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as we look at the top 10 teams in the NFL, I mean, it's always a fluctuation each week of which team is moving where.
Yeah.
But as we started out this week, Charlton, in the top 10, I look at Houston as my number 10 team in the league. They came off a big conference win against Indianapolis last week, Charlton. Deshaun Watson has to be more consistent at quarterback. The defense has stepped up against Indianapolis, holding Jacoby Brissett without a touchdown pass.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of good football being played in this league. And I know everybody has their own opinion about who's the best team and who's not the best team, but it's just our opinion. I want to also get to Big C's number 9 pick for the NFL. Who's the best team at number 9? And your thoughts, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, if this team could find somebody on defense that was willing to tackle somebody, they can move up higher up the list and have more wins. But Kansas City, just because of Patrick Mahomes, has them at number 9,
Yeah.
They need to find a way to play some defense, though.
They may not find that this year, Big C. I want to get Big C's thoughts on number 8 in the NFL. Your thoughts?
Every week we look at this team and try to find out if they're a contender or a pretender. And just when you're ready to write them off the list, they come up with another big victory. They knocked off the Denver Broncos over the weekend. Frank Gore moved into the number 3 spot, all-time leading rusher in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills, can you trust that quarterback, Allen, in the playoffs?
We'll find out Thursday on Turkey Day, Big C. They go down and play Big Dallas. Give me Big C's thoughts on the number 7 team in the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that seems to be slipping week after week. Just when you thought they were the dominant team in their own division, Charlton, they fall and they get beat up on a Sunday night game. The Green Bay Packers. That offense was non-existent against the San Francisco 49ers, and they fall down to number 7.
They fall down to number 7. They were thrown down to number 7 the way they were hitting the turf out there at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, San Francisco. I'm going to get Big C's thoughts on the number 16 in the NFL. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this team has your cousin playing quarterback, and they got a great defense. Yeah. They're going to prove whether they're the best team in that division, Charlton. They're going to be playing the Packers in a couple of weeks, and that will determine who wins that division, the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, well, I know they're a good team. If they can keep running the ball and not trying to make it a pass team, I always love the way their defense is played. Going back to the Purple People Eaters, maybe this is Purple People Eaters Part 2, Big C. Give me Big C's number 5 NFL team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking at that Who Dat Nation down in New Orleans. This was a team that they had themselves a battle going against Carolina over the weekend, but we talked about the top receiver in the NFL, Michael Thomas, in clutch time, coming up with a big reception to get the team in field goal range. Drew Brees has to be a little more consistent. The defense gave up too many points against Carolina.
Well, that's very true, and since Brees has come back, they're still trying to find their stride, Big C. I want to get your thoughts on Big C's number 4 and the NFL, at least this week, Big C. Your thoughts?
This team doesn't know how to lose at home, and they come up with defense, Charlton, that's as good as I've ever seen in the NFL, and that's the New England Patriots, the defending Super Bowl champs. They're down at number 4, but they're still the defending champs, and until somebody knocks them off in Foxborough, they'll still be there.
Yeah, they can just trip their way over to the finish line, it seems, Big C. They got a lot of home cooking from the pinstripes. I'll just leave it at that. Give me Big C's thoughts on the number 3 team in the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this team, when you look at the only blemishes on their record, Charlton, came at home. They have 2 home losses, but they're undefeated on the road, and they have a quarterback that knows how to work his magic, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. They went into Philadelphia. They dominated the Eagles' offense, Charlton. That defense was lights out. They found a running game with Rashad Penny. Russell Wilson did his normal, throwing those touchdown passes, Charlton, and no interceptions. The Seattle Seahawks come in at number 3.
I want to go to your final 2 for this week, Big C. Big C's thoughts, the number 2 team in the NFL, Big C.
Well, the reason why I have this team at number 2, Charlton, is because of their 2 losses, and one of those losses came to the Cleveland Browns. They were just blown out. But they've been on a torrid pace lately, Charlton, and we saw them last night in the Los Angeles Coliseum, and Mr. Jackson threw 5 touchdown passes, would have ran for another one, Charlton, but he slipped down at the 1-yard line.
Yeah.
The Baltimore Ravens, an outstanding defensive team with an electrifying running game.
I thought he slipped to let Ingram get a touchdown. That's my opinion, Big C. Give me Big C's thoughts on the number 1 team this week in the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, I've come to the conclusion that these guys are for real. They're mining gold out there in California, Charlton. They've hit a home run with the San Francisco 49ers. We talk about defense of the New England Patriots. We talk about defense of the Baltimore Ravens. Well, the San Francisco 49ers have a damn good defense of their own, and I have them as the top-rated team in the NFL. And that offensive lately, Charlton, has been clicking. Jimmy Garoppolo has been dropping dimes and throwing touchdown passes, while the running game has been struggling, but it got a little bit on pace this last week against Green Bay. The San Francisco 49ers, with 1 loss, are the best team in the NFL.
Interesting said. Coming up this week, we have the 49ers going across the country into Baltimore, Maryland, and they will take on the Baltimore Ravens. Just a footnote, the Ravens have gone to Seattle, and they've beaten the Seattle Seahawks, which a lot of people thought that would be almost impossible. You could say special teams aside, they beat the Seattle Seahawks, and they beat them by double digits. No one does that in Seattle. Now, if you look at another team they've beaten out on the West Coast, they flew across the country, and they took on the LA Rams last night. They beat them by multiple double digits last night, Big C. And so now they're taking on the West Coast finest, at least so far. Seattle might have a different opinion on that. But the San Francisco 49ers, because this game is going to be on the East Coast, they've already doubled up on the teams in the NFC West. Give me your thoughts as to what you think they can do to slow down this machine. You know, Baltimore's only punted 3 times in the last 2 games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but they haven't played the 49ers defensive front 7, Charlton. When you look at the rotation that the 49ers have up front, what I saw last night with the Rams is that they took Aaron Donald away. They said, okay, we're going to invest in your top defensive lineman.
Yeah.
That's what they did with Aaron Donald. When you took him out of the equation, the other guys became simple.
Yeah.
Now when you're looking at the 49ers, you have 4 tremendous defensive linemen in the game at all times for the 49ers. Who do you take away? And the linebackers have been playing outstanding. They're underrated in San Francisco. But as the 49ers defensive front, who do you take away where they can't do that with other teams in the NFL? They have the best front four in the NFL running right now.
Give me your thoughts, because we're going to see a great game after Thanksgiving is coming up. These two teams, some people think a preview of the Super Bowl coming up that's going to be also down in Miami this time. They played in New Orleans the last time. Everybody has their own opinion, but if I got your thoughts on this, as far as stopping Jackson or stopping the run game, he's really both pass and run games. What do the 49ers have to face or overcome in Baltimore's defense? Because their defense is legit also, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Baltimore has an outstanding defense, but the one thing that the 49ers do is they have a short passing game. They're trying to get rid of the ball in 2.3 seconds. They're not holding the ball like you've seen quarterbacks holding the ball against this Raven defense. Patrick Mahomes got rid of the ball quickly against this Ravens defense. Baker Mayfield got rid of the ball quickly against the Ravens defense. They don't want to hold the football. That's what Jimmy Garoppolo has been doing lately, getting rid of the ball quickly, but they also have a running game. That slows down, just like everybody who's played the Ravens. When you can come with a running game, then you make those defensive linemen pump their brakes just a little bit. And that's what you're going to get you're going to have two teams with outstanding running games that you're looking at that will most likely outdo the quarterbacks as far as throwing the ball. But the defensive line with the San Francisco 49ers, the Ravens still has not seen anything like that other than when they played Cleveland. This team is better than what Cleveland presented defensive line-wise to the Ravens.
Yeah, I look forward to it. It's going to be just a titanic matchup. NFL was doing it right. However it came together, these are some good games coming up, Big C, and we wish them all the best. With Week 12 to go before the College Football Playoff Committee selections for teams, the top 10 rankings, everybody has their own opinion. I want to get your thoughts. I'll bring up the number, and you give me your thoughts on that team. Number 10, the Michigan Wolverines. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they got the big matchup this week in the Big House against Ohio State, Charlton. Michigan has been playing outstanding football lately. That their offense has gotten on track. Shea Patterson had 5 touchdowns last week's game, Charlton. The Ohio State, they can't look past Michigan this week.
No, they can't look back. Number 9, Minnesota Gophers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Golden Gophers had that one slip up against Iowa, Charlton. They've moved back into the top 10. They have an opportunity to get into the Big Ten title game, Charlton, and who knows what can happen from there.
When you look at a team that's a lot more talented than maybe they're ranking the number 8 Florida Gators, Big C, your thoughts on Florida?
Well, when you look at Florida and playing in the SEC, Charlton, they have no way of making the playoffs. But, this is a team that has been their losses came against top 10 teams, Charlton, this year.
Yeah, they were in those games also. Number 7, Oklahoma Sooners. They hate playing from up front. They love playing from behind, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Sooners are creeping back up, Charlton. They have an outside chance of making the college football playoffs. Ironically, they may end up playing Baylor again in another week, and we'll see, what happens from that.
Yeah, we'll definitely see that. Number 6, Utah. The Pac-12's only hope, Big C, your thoughts?
The Pac-12's only hope to get into the college playoffs, Charlton. Some catastrophic things have to happen in front of them with the rankings, but who knows in college football. But they still have to play the Pac-12 championship game, and you got to realize Oregon will be smarting and trying to knock Utah out of the playoffs.
And Utah's signature win is BYU. They got to go schedule a big team from the SEC or a big team from the Big Ten or the Big 12 if they want to be taken, more serious when it comes to should they get in or should they be out. Alabama, number 5 in the country. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Alabama is who Alabama is. It's a machine, is what Alabama is. It's called plug and play. You just plug in the next player, Charlton, and he will play down at Alabama. Mac Jones, they don't have any problems at quarterback. He showed his productivity in 2 games that he started this year, Charlton. He has thrown 6 touchdown passes.
Yeah, he's a really good player. And their defense carries them, too, also. Number 4, the Georgia Bulldogs, Big C.
Well, this is the mystery team in the top 4 when I look at the Georgia Bulldogs. Everyone talks about how good their defense is, but their offense is a little pathetic right now. They're just not getting any productivity out of their quarterback, Jacob Fromm. 2 of his last 3 games, he's less than 50% completion.
Yeah.
If not for an outstanding defense, Georgia would be ranked a lot lower.
You look at a team that has not lost a game since 2017. They're coming number 3. That's the Clemson Tigers. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, what can you say about the Tigers and quarterback Trevor Lawrence and running back Trevor Etienne? The defense is outstanding in Clemson. You know, everyone talks about their offense, but you think about what they've done the last 4 years defensively. They had a huge graduation class, Charlton, but they have not missed a step on defense.
No, they really haven't, Big C. But they also, when you look at their marquee out-of-conference game, and we look at Texas A&M, everybody's tossing around Texas A&M like a rag doll, Big C. I'd like to see them play a Big Ten power, SEC power. That's just my opinion, but they're undefeated. You can't knock them for that. Number 2, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the Buckeyes, they struggled last week against Penn State, Charlton, but they stayed undefeated. The defense was as advertised. Chase Young showed back up after suspension, had 2 sacks. Justin Fields did just enough at quarterback to get the victory. J.K. Dobbins was dominant on the ground with over 170 yards.
When you think of a team that's number 1, people say defense wins championships. If LSU wins the national championship, you can't say defense wins championship anymore. It has to be their offense. Their defense gives up a lot of points, not even a championship defense, but they simply outscore teams. Give me your thoughts if that might catch up to them in the bowl championship playoffs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was a team that was slow off the start last week. Halfway through the second quarter, Charlton, they ran a 7-7 tie against Arkansas, working with an interim head coach. But all of a sudden, the offense exploded for 3 quick touchdowns in the second half of the second quarter, Charlton, and LSU rolled off to a comfortable lead.
Yeah.
This is going to be very interesting. They still have to play Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, and it's going to be a game that a lot of people look forward to. I know everybody has their opinion of what conference plays the best competition. I think it's always proven when you go outside of your conference and knock off the champ, and that's why I respect what Oregon and Auburn were trying to do earlier in this season. But how we opened the program, I was talking about USC, Southern California football, West Coast football. It will become more relevant when those teams win in the West Coast. But also a marquee program, and it's amazing when we don't talk about them when we go through a top 10, and that's University of Texas. The Longhorns, they have a history of winning. They have a history of having a Heisman Trophy winner, some great coaching, a lot of players that have gone on to the next level. But fixing Texas, I think it requires a long look in the mirror. You look at head coach Tom Herman, he's a good old boy. He fits in with the boosters. It's about who you like. That cronyism works, Big C. 1 year after playing for the conference championship, Texas is 6-5, which is worse than Clay Helton over at USC. They're talking about firing Clay Helton. Don't fire Clay Helton. And then 4-4 in the Big 12. You can't tell me there are 4 universities in the Big 12 that play better football recruiting than Texas. And think about it. They've regressed to the point that the program feels almost right back where they started when they brought Herman on for the job because he passed the paperback test. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when Herman has to look at himself, you got to also think about he has 2 Big 12 victories, Charlton, that came with last-second field goals.
Yeah.
He could easily right now be 4-6 on the season as you think about Coach 4-7 rather.
Yeah.
Texas has struggled. This is an anomaly going on down there right now. They got rid of Charlie Strong because they said he couldn't win the big games. Just a year ago, he was in the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma and lost that game, Charlton. And since then, this team has been on a downhill slide.
Yeah.
What is the problem for Texas? They got one more game to go. They could end up 500 on the season.
Yeah.
You can't say it's a lack of talent down there in the Lone Star State with Texas.
Yep.
And you think about that. There's 2 teams in the state that are actually having better records. Actually, 3 teams in the state that have better records than Texas.
Yeah.
You got Texas Tech. You got Baylor down there with better records than Texas, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it, SMU right across town.
Yeah.
Ranked in the top 25.
Yep. You really have. I mean, and they're also expanding their stadium to get more money in there so they can get more whatever money buys your Big C. But they have, I don't know if they've got it right with this hire here, in my opinion. So I want to get to the top 2 statistical quarterbacks in college football. And just because you have the numbers, it doesn't mean your team is going to win a lot. Anthony Gordon, Washington State, 470 completions. He has a 71.3% completion ratio, 4,920 yards. That's 4,920 yards, 45 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions, which is a lot. But you could throw for 5,000 yards, and you still have a couple of games to play this year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, those are phenomenal numbers, Charlton, when you think about the college game. This kid's going to throw for over 5,000 yards this season. Haven't seen that since Colt Brennan did it at the University of Hawaii back in the early 2000s, Charlton. Mid-2000s at the University of Hawaii when they were ranked in the top 15 in the country, Charlton. But as I look at Anthony Gordon statistically, and you talk about Pac-12 not getting any notoriety, Charlton, you have the leading thrower in the country as far as quarterbacks. And your conference is not even known about.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I just think a lot of them play each other. But it's a matter of going outside of your conference and winning. They had a big win down at Houston earlier in the year, but Houston's not a dominant program. Big C, another good old boy, Joe Burrow, LSU, 291 completions. Think about this guy. He completes 78.9% of his passes. He's thrown for 4,114 yards, 41 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. And I'm going to say that's come against the SEC competition, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, not only that, Joe Burrow has beaten four teams in the top 10 this year. So when you look at his productivity, Charlton, completing 79% of his passes, and if he stays there, that's going to set an NCAA record as far as completions on a season. He's got 2 1,000-yard receivers, and he has the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, he's just a dominant athlete. He was also a great player in basketball, too, when he played in high school up in Ohio. I want to look at some running backs also, just 2. But Chuba Hubbard, out of Oklahoma State, 285 attempts, 1,832 yards. He has 20 touchdowns. Most likely will get to 2,000 yards. I'm just going to say this weekend, but surely he'll get it before the season's over. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, here's a guy that's less than 180 yards away from 2,000 on the season, Charlton. Talk about productivity of a running back in the Big 12, and we all know of the history of the running backs in Big 12, even especially at Oklahoma State, where you've had Chris Carson, who is now with the Seattle Seahawks, but Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders, that's their alma mater also, Charlton. Chuba Hubbard, Canadian kid. They just had the Canadian Football Championship over the weekend, but he's a champion in his own right. Looks like he's going to win the NCAA rushing title.
Yeah, he's a dominant player at Big C, and they're under the radar, too, down at Oklahoma State. Imagine if he played at Oklahoma, but if he did, he wouldn't have that many rushes anyway. Jonathan Taylor, the Wisconsin Badgers, 261 attempts, 1,685 yards, 18 touchdowns. Probably not going to crack the 2,000-yard mark. But they have a couple more games and they'll get the bowl game. I'm sure he'll get over 2,000 yards just looking at. I mean, he's only at 315 yards away from having 2,000. Imagine that, 2 dominant programs that are going to have a 2,000-yard running back. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan Taylor, since he's come into college football, Charlton, has been the most dominant, complete running back in the game. You think about it, in his short 2-year career in college football, he's had 14 200 rushing yard games, Charlton. Think about that. He's rushed for over 200 yards 14 times in his college career, and always leading the Big Ten in rushing.
Yeah, always. He's amazing. But, sometimes you need someone to throw the ball to. Omar Bayless, Arkansas State. He has 80 receptions, 1,375 yards, and 15 touchdowns. He's productive. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you see how far Arkansas is down, how did they let this guy get off to a smaller school within the state, Charlton? Arkansas really could have used Mr. Bayless, who's leading the country in receptions and yards.
Yeah, they really could have. Antonio Gandy Golden out of Liberty, 70 receptions, 1,304 yards, and 9 touchdowns. You would think you have more touchdowns with 1,300 yards, but you can't complain about 9 touchdowns either, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, here's a young man who's off the radar, but the scouts knows who he is, Charlton. He's not playing in a big-time program, but he has big-time productive numbers.
Yeah, he really does. I just want to just throw back your thoughts on, we talk about the college football playoffs, and people are always waiting for what's going to happen. If you look at the FCS bracket, and they have 24 teams that participate in their playoffs, and I know people say, well, what about the kids going to school? Whatever argument they make, the FCS used to be 1AA. In 1978, they had the first playoff. They had 4 teams, and they found a way to expand it. And, in fact, they found a way to have kids go to school and graduate. They found a way to keep kids healthy. They found a way to overcome every excuse that D1 has made about, well, we don't want to cut back some of the bowl games and and we don't want to have too many games. They figured it out, and it makes the bracket more exciting. So instead of having 4 teams where actually there might be 8 teams that are good enough to win a national championship, and we're all saying about, well, we don't want one team to get in because they have a loss. It might be a team with a loss that ends up being the best team in the country. Just a thought. What could the Division 1 or FBS learn about FCS, Division 1 versus Division 2? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what you said right off the bat, Charlton, did they have a bowl system prior to having a playoff system? When you talk about expansion of the college football playoffs, which bowl games do you eliminate?
Yeah.
At what point do you start the college football playoffs? If you look at the subdivision when they start their playoffs, Charlton, they start their playoffs early in December.
Yeah.
So as that playoff starts, I think it might even start in late November.
Yeah.
So when that playoff system starts, school is still going on. Not only is school still going on, Charlton, but the major question is which bowls do you go out and eliminate to create a college football playoffs? Because you're talking about money. These bowls have generated millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, Charlton, for these universities over the decades. So you think about the New Year's One bowl day, Charlton, when you got the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, all those bowls that are played on one day. Do you eliminate those bowl games so that you can now have a college playoff system?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And some people feel that those bowl games can be a part of that playoff system. Maybe not 24 teams, but I would love to see at least 6 or 8 get in. And just to pay some homage to the FCS, James Madison University is 11-1. They're the number 1 seed, followed by Weber State. They're 9-3, the number 2 seed. The number 3 seed is Sacramento State. They're 9-3. Montana State out of Bozeman. Montana's 9-3, and they're the 4th seed. And then you have University of Montana in there as well. So I just wish everybody the best. I love when people get to earn it on the field, and everybody knows that when you play for something, it's a lot more credible than being voted in, and everybody can vote in who's going to be the better team. I just love when people can play for it, and I hope that happens sometime in the near future. Big C, you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on a program that I really love called Alexa. Just say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, I want to close with tonight's show, NBA basketball. We have the Clippers at Mavericks, the Wizards at, actually, we have the big game, obviously, is when you talk about these two teams that everybody is looking at. They talk about Luka Doncic, and you have, obviously, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, who's going to be the guy that shows up tonight. And I want to get your feeling on that matchup because it's more important than the Wizards and Nuggets, even though that could be a decent game. Just give me your feeling on this Clippers at Mavericks. What does it mean for the NBA? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, it's an early season game right now. The Mavericks have one of the most elite players in the NBA in Luka Doncic. I don't think the Clippers have an answer for him. This is a guy that's been averaging a triple-double the last 2 weeks, Charlton. He's averaged over 35 points a game in his last 3 games.
Yeah.
Who's going to stop him defensively for the Clippers?
That's amazing to see Kawhi and Paul George, and everybody has their own thoughts about what is good basketball. This is really good basketball, even in the heart of football season. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we get closer to Thanksgiving and all that comes good with that, Charlton, and we're going to have a couple of outstanding games on Thanksgiving Day, NFL, college football, Charlton. Looking forward to eating a whole lot of turkey and sitting back eating a great amount of dessert.
And I'm sure a lot of those kids are hoping that they're not selected. It's like at the dance. Imagine being at the dance back in the day and you're wondering, will she pick me or will she pick somebody else? Big C, those turkeys are hoping that no one picks them, but you can always pick a turkey every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, where you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.